And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this special edition episode of the Assembly Call as we continue our behind-the-scenes look at what happens with IU basketball off the court and behind the scenes. A few weeks back, you may recall that we did an episode with Jeremy Gray and Andrew Brown in the wake of Indiana's hilarious clapback tweet at the silly criticism that had flooded in upon posting a video of some players doing yoga. And during that conversation, both Jeremy and Andrew kept bringing up one name, which is today's guest, and I quickly realized that we needed to plan a show just with her. She is the Director of Digital and Social Media for Indiana Sports, which means that when a hilarious viral video like the yoga response video gets posted, she probably played a big role in it somehow, and with name, image, likeness changes coming to college sports, her role is becoming even more essential and impactful at athletic departments around the country. She is Lynnea Phillips. Lynnea, welcome to the Assembly Call. It's great to have you here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what's your job like right now with so much changing? This has to be just kind of a crazy but also exciting time period for you, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said it's never dull, but it's exceptionally not dull right now. Coming off of what was a wild, crazy kind of COVID year, right? And now we're diving right into NIL. So keeping me busy, that's for sure. And I'm really excited to see Indiana take the reins and kind of be the leader in the NIL space. And so we're not stopping. We've just gotten started and we're hitting the ground running. So keeping it going.
So hold that thought, because I want to talk about that and spend some time talking about name, image, likeness. But I want to start out talking about you. How did you get into this? What's your background? How long have you had this role?
I've been in Indiana for almost 5 years. So I've been here. I started after football season, so September 2016. So I've seen a lot of change in my almost 5 years here in Indiana. But prior to being here, I was the social media coordinator at the University of North Carolina for 2 years. So I worked at another basketball school. And then before that, I was actually an NCAA intern. So it was funny going from the NCAA to going to North Carolina. They were fighting each other in the media almost daily. And then coming to another basketball school in the state where the NCAA is located. So I keep it all relative, I guess.
Yeah. And what is it about this role, about this kind of work that interests you and that got you into it?
Wow. I mean, I could take it a lot of different ways, but I really think communicating. I majored in communications in undergrad, but communicating with all different types of people, all different walks of life. One of our target audiences, huge target audience, student athletes, right? So that age group, we target recruits a lot of the time, so younger than even our student athletes, but also communicating with fans, alumni. It's really never boring.
Yeah, I can imagine, and especially now with everything that's changing. What have been the biggest changes? And maybe we can just stick with your time at IU. Since you got to IU in 2016, which feels like 3 decades ago. Like you say 2016, it feels like it's so long ago, and it's really not that long ago. But what are some of the biggest things that have changed for you and kind of how you do your work in that time?
I would say at first one of the lures, the way that they really got me interested into being a Hoosier was the creation of the Mark Cuban Center. When I started at IU, the Cuban Center wasn't even done being built. When I came in my interview, I wore a hard hat and took a tour of, the construction zone of Assembly Hall. And so when I started, I was over in the north end zone, kind of just chugging away, doing my work. But I feel like the real shift came when we moved into the new Cuban Center space. Our collaboration has kind of taken new heights. I work really closely with our graphic design team, our videographers, our photography team, the SIDs, the media, they're not media relations anymore, strategic communications, the strategic communications staff. We share space with them. And so we're just regularly collaborating. And that's been the real kind of 180. We went from kind of being in our own different separate spaces to really working together on a regular, consistent basis.
How unique is something like the Cuban Center? I mean, obviously, it's a space, number one, where you can all be together. Is that something that's common, or does the department tend to be a little bit more spread out? And then what kind of technology are you guys able to have at your disposal because you have the Cuban Center?
I would say spaces like the Cuban Center space have become more prevalent in college athletics. I think IU was right on the cusp of that. And because of, not to pat ourselves in the back too much, but because of the success that people have kind of seen come out of our space, it's become even more kind of a goal for a lot of athletic departments to have, especially in the Power Five. So
it's an IU podcast. We can pat ourselves on the back here.
Okay, shout out to IU to be one of the first. But we kind of set the bar there, so it's become more consistent across college athletics. But I think the way that we operate and the communication and collaboration that we have is unique. We've especially this year, we've really tapped into it just because of the necessity that's come out of the pandemic. But we have content teams for every single one of our sports, and we meet regularly with the coaching staffs. And if Steve Aird wants to do something with volleyball, I'm usually one of the first people that he calls related to social and digital media. Like, the coaches have my number. I'm on a lot of their speed dials. We exchange texts, no matter what time of the day. We're working really closely with recruiters. I talk to my video teams daily, and so we just work really closely together, and we're almost like, dare I say, like a family. Like, we're regularly communicating, not just about work, but also just about life in general. So we're very close that way.
I mean, that's what it seems like with everybody that I've talked to. It really does seem like a close-knit group where everybody wants to give other people the credit, which is a sign of a great team.
Yeah.
And, like I was saying, we heard that a lot when I was talking with people about the video that you guys put out. I'm sure everybody remembers, you guys put out the video of the guys doing yoga. Some fans had their thoughts on that. You guys put the video out, which was a hilarious response, and just social media done perfectly because it was funny, but it was also direct and had a point. And I think it kind of fit with this ethos that we're seeing come out of the IU athletic department that I think stemmed from what Scott Dolson wanted, which is we're going to take control of the messaging a little bit here, and start to kind of build a brand here. Walk me through how something like that happens. We got kind of Andrew's story of how it happens and Jeremy Gray's story. What was your role in it? And when things like that happen, how deep into the details do you actually get?
This is a really great question. I feel like, on any given project, there's a lot of people involved, but I would say the past couple of years since kind of taking over the voice of men's basketball and football on social, I've been a little sassier, I would say. So I'm always down for a little bit of sass, a little bit more of letting people know that actual humans like run these accounts, and we read what they write, and the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm usually the one reading most of it, so we see what they're saying. We're taking it in, whether it be warranted criticism or a little bit unwarranted criticism. We read pretty much everything people send us. So I let that be known, especially to my coworkers, like, hey, did you guys see this? Like, did you read? Especially when we're creating things, I encourage my video team, my photography team to say, or to read, like, what the vibe is. If people like the video, they're going to say they like it. If they don't like it, they're going to say they don't like it. So kind of having our thumb on the pulse of like what the fans want, what the audience wants to see, and what they have to say about things is really important. So I always try to bring that side to things when we're talking about creating content. I'm not really sure. I think Andrew had the idea. Like, we saw some of the backlash that we were getting about yoga, and we were all kind of talking about it like yoga's a pretty normal thing for high-level athletes to do in 2021. Like, it's not like that out of the ordinary. I thought something that was really funny, that one of the comments came out was like, they thought that yoga was new to us, and like they'd been doing yoga for years. Like, this is the first time we really just like captured them doing yoga. So and
it was probably a lot of the same people that like criticize the strength and conditioning program if guys get hurt during the season. It's like, well, yoga's probably the best thing they could do to help prevent that.
Yeah, it was a lot of, and I recognize people who comment on our stuff. So it was a lot of people who've said things in the past. So I have that kind of vibe to it too. I'm like, oh, these are the regulars, like they regularly are consuming our content. And I think when it is regular people, we can kind of joke with them a little bit more, they're diehard fans. They're interested in what the program's doing. So like a joke probably wouldn't hurt their feelings so much. So that was kind of the part that I had in the video, was like keeping my thumb on the pulse of the vibe of the fans and saying, they're making fun of us. Let's joke a little bit. And so Andrew was great. While he was making the video, we were in communication talking about what's too far, what kind of pop culture clips we should include. Maybe you should block out some of the names so it's not super aggressive, and just kind of working together while he was creating the content to keep it lighthearted and funny. And the delivery, it blew up even more than I thought it would. I know that once we were kind of done with the video, we sent it to Jeremy Gray to kind of get his approval. And I was like, you're probably not going to like this. It's probably like, we're not going to put it out, but like, we just wanted to have some fun. And I was shocked when he was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, all right, like, let's be that sassy program. And so I want to say this is not something we're going to do like constantly. Like, we're not just going to, like, there are some Twitter accounts. The LA Kings were like notorious for it. Like, that was their vibe on social media. And I don't think we're trying to be snarky or rude to our fans. We understand that they're really engaged, involved, diehard fans, and we like that. We want that. But we just wanted to have some fun with them and let them know, like, we read what you're saying. Like, we get it.
Now, do you, like I said, you're the director of social media. Obviously, football and men's basketball are the two biggest and most followed accounts. What's happened with football has been incredible. My dad was a coach under Bill Mallory here in the 80s and 90s, which was one of the really the only other great extended runs of success Indiana has had. And it's to see what Indiana has been for most of its life in terms of football, and now to see what the national brand is of Indiana football over the last couple of years, it's incredible, in large part because of what's been done with social media. Do you have your hands a little bit more on the pulse there with basketball and football? Do you take more personal control, or are there kind of other people that are managing those?
I would say, and I'll always say, it's a team effort. There's a lot of us involved, but I would say the posting that goes on those men's basketball and football accounts, usually that's me. Like 95% of the time it's me posting on those accounts. So in that regard, I would say yes. But I'm involved in a little bit of everything. So generally, I have a really great intern team. This past year, they were amazing. They helped live tweet pretty much every single one of our sports here in Indiana. So shout out to the interns.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm with them every step of the way. I'm at pretty much every sporting event. So I was out at softball for a lot of their series. I was out, with baseball a lot of the time. I've been, this year, unfortunately, field hockey didn't play at home, but I go to field hockey matches. I go to pretty much everything. So I have my pulse on a lot of the different social media with IU athletics, but football and basketball, personally, I'm the one who spends a lot of the time on those accounts. Yes.
Something else you said was interesting is that, you and Andrew, you did this video, you're taking it to Jeremy Gray, but you're not expecting him to approve it. Why do you think that went differently than your expectations? Like, why do you think that he did approve it? Is that because of this new directive from Scott Dolson and kind of this new plan? Is that something that 2 years ago you don't think would have been approved? Does it have to do with who the coach is and what they want to do? Like, why do you think it's different now?
I would almost say it's my own skepticism. I'm very, I don't want to say hesitant, but I'm very guarded, I guess, in some of the stuff that we kind of approve and pass through. I mentioned that I used to work at North Carolina, and that kind of got me started in the social space. And so I worked there during their NCAA issues, and so everything we posted there, was criticized. Every single thing. It could have been like, we got straight A's this year. They'd be like, did you cheat? So even good news was criticized there. And so starting my career there really just got me put on the path of not everything's a go. You got to have some checkpoints of people to kind of say, this is the vibe, this isn't the vibe, this is going to work, this isn't going to work. And so that's why I really love our team effort here in Indiana. It's not just me coming up with some good and terrible ideas. We have a whole team of people kind of vetting different things, running different things. So almost everything I pitch that's edgier, I think it's never gonna fly. So I'm a little skeptical myself, but I'm glad to have the support of people on our team who are like, no, this is great, let's do it. So
yeah. So the breakout star, the breakout social media star of the offseason for the basketball program has clearly been Kenya Hunter. His tweets have been awesome. And they're sparse, but every time he sends one out, I feel like it's great and it's cutting and it's just like it's really, really good. Who's managing Kenya's account and helping him with that? Is Kenya coming up with that all on his own, or is he getting some
Kenya
help?
is managing Kenya's account. So like when you see stuff from his account, it's all him. And I agree with you. He's been the breakout star. Like I didn't know he had it in him, honestly. Like I did not, he was kind of quiet last year. And so and not just him, like the whole basketball staff, they've been really open and excited to kind of jump on social media, own their own brands. They're all an extension of the Indiana basketball brand, but at the end of the day, they're their own people too. And we want them to kind of showcase their own personalities and what they bring to the program as well. So I'm excited that they're all jumping on the bandwagon and loving Twitter.
Let me be delicate with how I ask this question, because I don't want to get you in trouble with how you answer it, but I think it's important and something a lot of people are wondering. There's obviously a change in the basketball program in terms of the coach. Generally speaking, we don't need to get into specifics about people, but how much of an impact does that make? Like, for example, with the football program, Tom Allen is a force of nature, and he's got this personality and the LEO slogan. And I mean, I would imagine, is just a dream for someone in your position, because there's so many things he does and says that are so great for social media. Steve Aird probably being another one. I'm sure he comes to you with lots of ideas. It's kind of his personality. Other coaches, they don't have that same personality. They're a little bit more reserved. They're a little more focused on the coaching, not the social media stuff. So how big of an impact does that make, having buy-in or having enthusiasm for the guy who's actually the head coach, for that trickling down to the assistants, to the players, and to everybody else who's doing what you do?
I think buy-in is huge, and this isn't even indicative of any state of whatever program we're talking about. Like, buy-in is major. That's kind of one of the things that we preach from a student athlete level, but also like when I meet with coaching staffs and talk to them about who they need to be on social media and what their platform is. Being invested and interested in the process is like the first step. So buy-in is major. I don't want to say, obviously the basketball coaching staff has gone through a couple of changes, and I don't want to say that they were any less bought in the past. I think the situations have changed just because of the way wins and losses affect a lot, right? And so even the tweets that I send, in game from Indiana basketball, the vibe is different depending on how the game goes, right? Like I'm a big stickler on, and I'm going to give away some of my secrets, always posting the final score. Mm-hmm. And whether we get criticized or not, and anybody who goes and looks at a final, doesn't matter if we lose, how bad we lose can lose by 1 point. There will always be negative comments on the final score. And so my own personal philosophy is you have to post the final score. The game is over. Just because the game is over, just because we lost, doesn't mean we're going to stop and give it up and never post again. Like, we're going to show up and go to practice tomorrow, And so big stickler on posting the final score. But the way that you tweet a game when it's not going your way changes, And I think that's the same of a social media philosophy in season for coaches, for the main account, whatever account it is related to a program. Your philosophy and the way that you approach social media is going to be different depending on how your season goes, because the backlash or the response that you get from fans is going to be different, right? And so I don't think, the last coaching staff was anti-Twitter or anti-social media. It was just, the way that the program was going at the time kind of dictated the way that they could approach it.
That makes sense. I guess everything's fresh when you're in the honeymoon phase with the new staff, so you can just go. Let's talk about name, image, likeness stuff, because it's obviously huge. It's obviously going to impact your position and everything that goes on. Can you give us first just what the status is of name, image, likeness? Because to my understanding, there's several states that have already approved this. The NCAA has not issued any blanket legislation. The federal government hasn't yet issued any blanket legislation. Indiana isn't yet one of the states, to my knowledge, that has approved this. But we know that Indiana is preparing for this and ready to get out in front of it. So where does that stand? And are you guys waiting for anything to actually get moving with it? Like, kind of where does that stand, and what are your expectations for how that's going to go over the next 3, 6, 12 months?
Yeah, so I will tell you, I've been tracking on this since I was an NCAA intern, so all the way back in 13, 14. I believe that was when the NCAA football game got pulled. It was during the O'Bannon trial case thing. And so I've been tracking this for a while, and we've kind of known, those of us in college athletics have just kind of known that something was going to happen. We didn't know what, but we knew motion was happening. And so, yes, Indiana, the state, doesn't have any legislation on the books. It almost seems like they're not even talking about it. It's not really on their radar. So there are other states, Florida being, I think, the first, who've passed legislation. And on July 1st, the game changes for the athletes in Florida. They're able to kind of earn based on their name, image, and likeness. The NCAA was talking about legislation they've been for years. They were actually, I believe, supposed to vote this past January on some legislation, and they decided to table it indefinitely. So
thanks, NCAA.
It seems like they are waiting for the U.S. government to kind of make their decision, because they knew whatever they decided, the U.S. government would ultimately trump, whatever the NCAA decided. So kick the can down the road. Now we are kind of waiting on the U.S. government to pass something. I believe last I heard, and this might not be right, there were a couple legislative things that they were talking about or discussing. It might just be down to one right now, but that is still very much in motion. That is still very much happening. I believe they're discussing it either this week or next in a committee. And so that's happening. But basically, the state of Florida, and there are a couple other states, when July 1st hits, the game is changed for them. So the big thing, too, is that if the game is changed in the state of Florida, how can the NCAA, enforce their rules, right? Like, if athletes in Florida can earn money, but athletes in Indiana can't, how do you decide to punish the athletes in Indiana versus the athletes in Florida? So there's still a lot of movement happening, a lot of conversation, but I say all of that to say Indiana University Athletics has been prepping and making moves to have the best solution for our athletes for a while now. We've been with this company, it's called Open Doors. You guys don't follow them on Twitter, all of our listeners, you should definitely go check out the Open Doors Twitter account. We've been partners with them since 2017. And at first, we partnered with them so they could help us kind of get different messages to our alumni. That quickly changed, and they got the approval from the NCAA to use it for current student athletes. So for a while now, we've been using it to kind of pump out and share content with our athletes. We really signed a pretty big contract with them about a year ago at this time, I think. And so we are Open Doors Ready partners, which is something that will benefit all of our student athletes, 24 sports, one team at Indiana, as we like to say. And so we are basically providing brand building solutions and content for all of our teams and programs here at Indiana. So every athlete, and we have all of the ones from this past school year onboarded to our program, they all get Open Doors social media assessments. So they can basically go on and look at this time how their social media kind of measures up. There are things in there that they kind of give them suggestions on what they can change or how they can best utilize their platforms, what day of the week is the best time to post, what time of the day is the best time to post. And through that platform, we're sharing the content that we create in the Cuban Center with the student athletes. So everybody gets their picture taken, they get all the pictures that they are in. That is a big change, because prior to 2017, we were taking a bunch of pictures and they weren't really getting them. They were just kind of sitting on our servers for our use. That was a really long answer to your question, so I'll let you jump back in because I'm running on.
No, it's great. No, that's exactly why I asked the question. So, if my understanding is correct, so let's take a basketball player. So, you guys are creating these videos for them, and Andrew kind of explained this, and then through Open Doors, right? Like a player can kind of log in, and they've got all these different videos and pictures there that they can post, like kind of at a click, right? And it'll go to their Twitter account. So it makes it easy for you guys to create the videos, the pictures, and they can get to them easily. So when, like last year, I remember, Anthony Leal, tweeted out a video after one of the games. So it was basically that video was created. He can just log in, boom, click, and then it posts. So it makes it easier for them to get that stuff out there using their own platforms. Is that
100%? Okay. We operate through this app. So there's an app with Open Doors. They get it on their phone, and so there's kind of two ways we can do it. There's basically a Dropbox, so we can just drop when we get the content, we can drop it in there, and then they can go find it when they want it. Or we can suggest posts to them. So the Leal post that you're talking about, we got a great. I think it was the first game that he played in. We got a great little shot of him. I think he made a basket. We clipped that up, put some music on it. I was able to suggest it to Anthony post-game and say, hey, you should post this. And then he did. So it's a great tool, I think, for us, but also for our athletes to be able to have regular content. Because before 2017, like I said, it was just we had content, but it was just kind of sitting there, and they weren't seeing it, they weren't using it. So now they can use it to their advantage.
When you create a video like that, does it for the most part get posted, or are there times when you create this great video but a guy's like, nah, or just doesn't follow up and doesn't do anything with it?
I would say 9 out of 10 they get posted. Especially now, we've recently started in the last year having content meetings with our athletes. So we're literally sitting down and talking to them and saying, hey, what do you want to see in these videos? What kind of music do you like? Is there a particular artist that you want us to pull and put on your highlight? Are you looking for a highlight reel at the end of the season, or do you want stuff clipped up when we get it? Do you want highlight plays, or do you want things that show your personality? And so because we're working so closely with these athletes to come up with the content that we're giving them, they're going to post it because it's what they want.
What an amazing resource. Like, just hearing you talk about this. I mean, if you're a player, it's like you have your own marketing agency, like right there, helping you go through this stuff, which is incredibly valuable. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's one of our goals, really. And the way that we kind of advertise it or tell them, it's like, we are professionals in this space. We know what good videos are. We know what good photos are. We know what good social media looks like. And we want to help you position yourself in the best way possible, because whether you're going pro or you're going to, go be a realtor or be a teacher, any of these tools in the digital space that we have can help you get where you want to go.
So social media is awesome, and it does many great things, but there is also a flip side to social media. And I'm curious, and you guys said that you have these kind of branding meetings with the players. What other education are players and even coaches getting on how to use social media, the do's and don'ts, the good stuff, the bad stuff? How much of that is happening?
I've met with every team, and this is I don't want to say it's super new, because the education used to live more in what's called the Excellence Academy here at Indiana Athletics. Yeah. But I can speak for myself, that in the last year I met with every single team. We talk about branding, we talk about positioning, we talk about how their representation of the university, the athletic department, Adidas, and then themselves, you're part of something bigger than yourself, is what we always say. And so, we're educating them, hopefully before issues arise. And then really those student athlete assessments that I talked about earlier help them. It actually scans a lot of their social posts. So if something is a questionable word, and it's not just like the worst cuss words you can think of, like if you say damn, it'll flag it. So it flags different things and says, hey, you might want to rethink this, you might want to delete it, you might want to take care of it. So we're trying to really get out in the front, in front of things before, hopefully there are no issues, but before issues arise, we're trying to educate our student athletes in a proactive way.
College coaches often joke, that they kind of live in fear of that, 2 a.m. phone call because someone's gotten in trouble or someone's done something. Do you, as the person who's in charge of the social media, do you live in fear at all of something's 100%. Going viral?
Yeah. Yes. And I keep talking about North Carolina, but when I worked in North Carolina, we had an NCAA issue. I had a couple, Stuart Scott passed away, Bill Guthridge, Dean Smith passed away. So I've experienced it all. And so I'm just, I don't put my phone on do not disturb because like something might happen. So the nature, the life of a social media person is just being on call all the time.
Yeah. When you kind of try to educate the guys and girls on the landmines that can be there, what are some of the main ones that you're trying to help them avoid?
Oh, the latest one now is like getting hacked. And really it's like getting phished. So it's like when they, and I know we've all seen it, like the weird Ray-Bans posts that like take over people's accounts. Like
Mm-hmm.
if somebody sends you a link, don't click on it. Like that's just
No.
like the rule of thumb. And so that's the biggest one is like if you get hacked, call me right away. Like get in touch with me right away. I've had from I feel like whatever program you mentioned, people have been hacked. And I'm like, I will help you get your account back. Like, don't pay them money. That's happened before. Don't pay them money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make a new account. Like, just get in touch with me. We'll get it back. It might take longer than you want it to take, but get in touch with me and we will do our best to get your account back. That's the biggest landmine right now is hacking.
So okay, so how much does hacking actually happen? Because a lot of times you'll see, a tweet gets sent that maybe someone regrets or that kind of causes a stir. They delete it and they say they got hacked, and everybody's like, "All right, sure, you got hacked." Right? So like how often is the hacking actually real? Is that really happening more than we think? And how often is that a convenient excuse for words that you regret?
I don't think it happens as often as people say it does. And really, if you are a big personality and you get hacked, there should probably be another account that verifies like so and so got hacked. Don't believe everything you see. But
Yeah.
half the time when like these big celebrities come out and say they got hacked because they tweeted something crazy, I don't buy
Yeah, I don't either.
it.
So, okay, so getting back to the name, image, likeness stuff, what are you anticipating and what is your involvement going to be, beyond just posting stuff, right? Because, like the big thing that we always used to talk about when Yogi Ferrell was here was it's like, why shouldn't Yogi Ferrell be able to get an endorsement deal with yogis? It's like, it sounds perfect. And it sounds like those kinds of things will be available to guys. So what will kind of your role be in helping to facilitate that, if at all, or will it just be, okay, this company's going to do this and, you're just kind of putting the content out. Do you know how all that's going to work yet?
It's not set in stone yet because, the legislation isn't finalized, but it sounds more and more like our involvement as an athletic department will have to be a very high level. We're not able to kind of broker deals or anything like that. It sounds like they will be able to get managers or agents who can help them kind of secure different deals.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like my role within the athletic department, it'll be more so education and then providing the content that we do right now. But as far as like outside deals, it sounds like they're not even going to be able to use like if I send Trace Jackson Davis a photo of himself making a dunk, he can't take that and turn around and give it to an organization who wants to show him wearing the Indiana uniform making a dunk. Like everything has to be kind of removed from our brand. But
okay.
we are able to help these athletes position themselves in a good light to make endorsement deals. So that's kind of the loophole.
All right. So it won't necessarily be like, okay, a player gets a deal with car dealership X or whatever, and then car dealership X like contracts you guys to like create the video and do all this stuff. Right. But they might send you content, or he'd be able to upload his content, but it's not going to be, you guys aren't going to have like, basically like an agency that's like creating all this content for guys from that standpoint.
Yeah, we have to be removed from anything related to these extra deals. That's kind of a conflict of interest. So we can't help with that. And that's one of the things that we're really telling our athletes now. Right now, you can't earn any money. Like, do not sign a contract, do not cash a check, don't do any of this stuff. But what you can do is utilize the Indiana brand and the brand that you're building for yourself to stack followers so that one day you'll be able to say, I have 1,000 more followers than I had last year. Pay me more than you would have paid me last year.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's pretty obvious what the benefits of name, image, likeness are going to be. And I think a lot of us, even who, like, or more traditionalists, kind of see like how it's fair for the players and the good parts about it. What worries you about it? Like what misgivings do you have about it, and what maybe the unintended consequences could be?
Wow. I'm worried about agents calling me and telling me you need to tweet more about my guy in game. You're not tweeting enough about my athlete, and I need you to tweet more about him so more people follow him so he can make more money or sign better deals. That's really selfish as a social media person who live tweets a bunch of games, but that's my kind of biggest worry. I think um, we hear all these like wild, wild west stories about like so and so's gonna be able to do this and this is gonna be wild and he's gonna be a millionaire and not want to come to practice and not want to do, media interviews. And I really think um, there is a possibility for that, but I think that's for a very small percentage of people. I think more so this will help the athlete who wants to go back to their hometown and get a free sandwich for like hanging out and posting about how they're at the local restaurant, or somebody who wants to run their own camp and use their own likeness to run their own camp when they're back home for the summer and make a couple $100, right? Like, I don't think this is going to be some huge everybody's a millionaire, type of thing. There will be a couple kids who get rich quick, but I think for the most part, it's just going to make, a lot of our student athletes be able to utilize their own presence just like any regular student does, right? Like right now, we have a rower who has a really awesome YouTube channel. She can't make monetized dollars off of ads on her YouTube channel, just like any other student, walking around the campus can. But when this rule changes, likely she'll be able to, make a couple bucks off of these great videos that she's producing. And so I'm really excited for opportunities like that, opportunities for kids to just, have a little bit of money, have a little bit of free food, maybe some perks, but that's what I'm most anticipating and most excited for.
Man, I'm glad you brought that up because, the way that I feel like it's going to be looked at is there probably are going to be like some high profile things that happen at big schools where a guy makes a lot of money. And then maybe there's a story we hear about players were jealous because this guy got, thousands of dollars for this deal and like all this stuff. And people are going to look at that and be like, see, that's why this is wrong. But it's kind of like the tip of an iceberg, right? And then you look down below and it's like, yeah, but what makes this right is that like someone like the rower that you said, who's got a YouTube channel, who should be able to put ads. If the people running a post-game show about the teams can put ads on their YouTube channel, the players should certainly be able to do it, right? And earn a little bit of money or earn the free sandwich like you talked about. And that's where the fairness comes in, And so I think there's going to be, like you said, so many more stories of that than the big kind of high profile ones, even though those are going to be the ones that get all the attention.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of how it goes in college sports somewhat. So just to go back to what we talked about with the dates. So basically, this is going to happen for Florida and some of these other states, maybe July 1st, but we're just in a holding pattern until we get more clarity on what can be done.
Yep. Okay. Just waiting it out.
Just waiting it out. Okay. But you guys are ready. The infrastructure is built. Things are ready to go.
Yes.
So we talked about some of the guidance that you give players, and you talked also about, the system that kind of looks through and kind of alerts them if they're putting a word in there that maybe they shouldn't. Is there any other type of approval process that guys go through when they want to send something out? I mean, obviously, coaches, I'm sure, have varying levels of control that they want over all this stuff. Coaches tend to be control freaks, and so I'm sure they have much less control than they want. But are there department-wide guidelines or team-wide guidelines that guys have for, or guys and the women who play, for stuff they can tweet that they need to get approved? Anything like that?
At Indiana, I feel like we're pretty loose with it. There's like the general, like, don't embarrass yourself, don't embarrass the team, you're part of something bigger than yourself. Think of, would your grandma appreciate reading this on Twitter? But other than things like that, we don't really have, you've heard other football programs say, no tweeting during the season or anything like that. We don't really have any policies like that here. And I'm really glad we don't, because how do I, justify, being smart, utilizing this tool, when you're in the quote unquote real world, you're going to have to use your better judgment. This is a learning experience like college is supposed to be. So we don't have any, you can't tweet that, or I got to read your tweet before you send it type things. But we pretty much trust them and try to educate them ahead of time.
You got to be careful with the grandma example, because the Indiana basketball program especially has some grandmas that are intense, and the grandmas probably need to be kept away from Twitter.
You said it, not me.
Hey, we got some of those grandmas listen to this show. They know what I'm talking about. That's okay. They're proud of it. Metrics wise, what do you look at, and what do the players look at to kind of know if this is working? Like, I saw the football program, send out a tweet. I think maybe it was last week, how they led the Big Ten in something. I'm going to forget what the metric was. Something, I don't know, impressions per tweet or something. It was awesome. I mean, for Indiana to lead the Big Ten in anything in football that has to do with like online excitement is crazy. So, what kind of metrics do you look at, and what are the ones that when you see them, you're like, yes, we are on the right track?
I like to pull engagement. That's kind of a bigger. It's not just retweets. It's a number of people who reply to us or like our tweet or click on the link, or retweets are in there too. So engagement's the big one for me. Everybody likes to look at retweets and all that, and that matters. But to me, I just want to know who's engaging with our stuff. It doesn't matter how. I just want to know that you're paying attention to us. So, yeah, we had a really great year for football, which was awesome. I think, it was kind of a hard year to work in college athletics, and so being able to kind of capitalize not only on our successful play but our successful social strategy and be a well-oiled machine in the middle of a pandemic, I think really helped. Our success with football kind of helped us catapult our strategy for our other sports. So like the content team idea really came out of what we did for football this past fall. We were really limited to the amount of people that could cover the team. During fall camp, we were limited to the full-time photographer, the full-time videographer, the full-time social person being myself from the Cuban Center. So usually we would send out a huge team. I was guilty of taking at least 3 interns to football practice on a regular basis, but we were limited to 3 people total. So a small, well-oiled machine we were. And so then we kind of rolled that out for all of our other sports. And we had testing protocols just like the athletes too. So, shout out to our interns who would wake up early to go test to make sure they didn't have COVID and then be able to kind of do their work. And so, it was out of necessity. We were a smaller team, but we were able to capitalize off of a good year. So engagement is huge to us. It's really funny to me though, because, Coach Allen's Twitter account had an even bigger year than the Indiana football accounts. And, I always think like, what would it be like from the Indiana football account if we took all those videos and didn't give them to Coach Allen? If we took all those videos and only put them on Indiana football, our numbers would be even more through the roof from the Indiana football accounts. But the fact that we kind of spread the love out, gave Coach Allen his messages, gave the athletes their messages, we were able to kind of win on social media across the board, not just from the Indiana football account.
Yeah, and I mean, Coach Allen just wears his love for IU on his sleeve, so promoting him, it's not like he's one of those coaches that is stopping by and has one foot out the door and looking at the next job. He's the kind of guy that you feel like you can really do that with, I would feel like.
Yes.
So, this podcast is obviously for IU fans, and you get a chance, obviously, to see so much of what IU fans post and to interact, some. But you also see behind the scenes the impact that social media can have, good or bad. I'm sure when guys and girls go on social media, after games and they see positive stuff from fans, it makes them feel good. And when they see the negative stuff, I'm sure, we all wish that they would not open up Twitter on those days, but I'm sure they do, as we all do. And you see the negative stuff. And as much as you can say that it doesn't affect you, and, a lot of times the negative stuff hurts worse than the good stuff feels good. If you had the opportunity, and I guess you do have the opportunity right now, to just talk directly to IU fans and basically give them advice on how best to handle social media to make sure that they're being a supportive voice for the program, as opposed to, a voice that is not so supportive, what can fans do? What should fans do on social media to help the team that they ostensibly want to support and want to see win?
Wow. I would say, the biggest thing to me is be a fan. You're a fan. You obviously love this brand. You love this team. You love these sports. And don't forget that. Even when the times are tough, like these are college athletes. A lot of them are, not even in their 20s, in their early 20s. Some of them are still teenagers. And so sometimes things don't go the way we plan. Sometimes they don't go the way that we want them to go. But they're still teenagers. They're still, young adults enjoying, playing a sport. And so cheer them on, encourage them, push them to be successful. But, be positive. Try to keep it positive. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. The adage goes. And so just be supportive. If somebody's having a bad game, you could still say like they're your favorite player, and you can't wait till the next game to see them come out, shake it off, and do better. So keep it positive.
Yeah. Is there, obviously without naming any names or anything, are there any stories that come to mind for you that kind of illustrate the negative impact of social media, where maybe you saw it and you can actually kind of draw a direct line where it's like, man, this reaction happened on social media and this player actually played worse because of it or lost their confidence because of it. Like, are there any actual stories that come to mind that illustrate that?
I don't have any specific stories of like a player losing their confidence, but I do know, people read what others have to say. I read it. The athletes read it. The coaches read it. We are not reading the stuff that you write, and so that could be a good or a bad thing that I'm making known. And so we are not as removed from things as people I think sometimes think. I read pretty much everything. So if you think that if you're mad at a coach and you think you're writing the coach, you're writing me. So you're writing me, I'm reading it, and I'm reading it. So, I would say, and that's not just for sports, that's for kind of any, social manager. If you're unhappy with the way that a restaurant handles their service to you and you're writing their corporate Twitter account, there's a human being reading that who probably doesn't even live in the town where you went to the restaurant. So, and I think a lot of people might be surprised to kind of hear that said, but you really shouldn't be. It's 2021. That's kind of how social media rolls. Like, there's a person on the other end of the account. Usually it's not the person that you're mad at. So let's reevaluate. And that's not to say like, don't write me, don't write us. I totally love when I get to interact with fans, but just kind of be aware, who you're writing.
Have you ever, when you're reading this stuff, because obviously fans love to think that they're coaches and love to think that they have better ideas than the coaches. Guilty as charged right here. But have you ever been compelled to say, wow, that's a good point. Let me take this maybe they should practice free throw shooting. Maybe they should. Maybe he should play the guy with 2 fouls in the first half. Look what Assembly Call tweeted.
I'm now that a lot of people watching this know that I'm the one who runs the account, I've written people back and said that a couple. If I get it a lot, I'm like, we'll try that next time, or let me go. My favorite is when people write and they're like, hey dude, or like they think it's a guy running the Twitter account, and I'm like, not a guy, not the coach, not playing, not even sitting next to coach, so I can't even be like, hey, Bob from Twitter says that. Like, no, not happening. So yeah, I've been a little sassy sometimes in my reply, but sometimes like I get it. Like,
sometimes it deserves a sassy reply though.
Sometimes it does. And I try to play my cards. I'm not always sassy. I'm not always, internalizing things. But sometimes if you get me on a good day, you'll get a reply.
See, now that I know this, I'm just going to go direct to you during games with my thoughts. Just, Lynnea, why are we doing this?
Right. In my DMs. I'm going to be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Great question.
Jared, stop. Yeah.
I'm like, I thought the same thing. Like, and it's funny sometimes the fans tweet things that I'm thinking. Like, And I'll be like, I agree with you, but I can't say that.
Don't retweet, don't retweet, don't
right,
retweet.
right. So, our fans, and like, I really appreciate it during basketball games. Indiana fans are knowledgeable about basketball. So,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we're getting critical tweets, they're not all wrong, some of them, but they're not all wrong. And so it's like, okay, like, I appreciate you voicing your basketball knowledge, but at the end of the day, I can't run down and tell Coach Woodson what play we should run next,
Yeah.
So, it is what it is. But I know people like to vent, and sometimes I don't mind being the reader of the venting. So,
I'm just looking forward to like 5-10 years in the future when we're all watching games in like these spatial environments with virtual reality. So we're actually going to be more like face to face, and you'll actually be saying something to someone's face, even though it's virtually. I think that'll cut down on the vitriol. Actually,
and
I
that's
think.
yeah, when people know, like when if they saw me, and like I've had this happen, and some people who do this might be listening. When we used to have fans at our games, hopefully fans get to come back this year, fingers
Mm-hmm.
crossed. But where I sit during basketball games, I sit up on that row where Don Fisher sits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the very end on the one side. I'm probably giving away my spot now, but I've had fans sit behind me and like rows behind me, and then like they catch on to what I'm doing. They catch
Mm-hmm.
on to my job. And so like at halftime they'll come down and be like, I know that you're running the Twitter. And I'll be like, oh yeah. So for some people it is like that environment where like they see what I'm doing and they see that I'm reading. I've had people write me and know that it was me. And I'm like, I can't reply to you as Indiana basketball. Like,
Yeah.
so it's funny. And I just gave away my spot. So now if anybody comes and sees me, come give me a wave, and you know who's tweeting games now. But
Yeah. Go say hi. Go say hi to Lynnea.
yeah, I've had people sit behind me and talk to me. I've had people say, hey, tweet that. Hey, tweet. Or they're like, so it's funny. And it happens sometimes. But
How do you manage? You have a personal Twitter account, and then obviously you've got these team accounts that that you're in charge of. It's not like you can just go say anything you want to on your personal Twitter account. I'm sure you're not going to, whatever that criticism was, right, that you're saying like, oh, I agree with fans. It's not like you can just hop off the Indiana basketball account and tweet it from your personal account. How do you kind of manage that?
I would say I use my personal account more for like professional development in like the social media and sports space. That sounds so pretentious, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's where I kind of engage with other people in my industry. I consume other sports teams' trends and what they're doing, kind of stay up on the business. And so I don't really tweet about Indiana stuff on my own personal Twitter account because partially things like you're saying. Like I don't want to get into the weeds and work related stuff on my own Twitter account. And it's easier for me to do that, I think, because and like this is a weird thing to say, but I work at Indiana. I'm not an Indiana alum. I didn't go to IU. I was born in Indiana, so I'm from here. But
Where are you from?
I was born in South Bend, but I grew up in Lakeville, Indiana, which is a very
Okay.
small town in northern Indiana.
Okay.
But so I know Indiana, but I'm not an Indiana fan. Like I'm not a lifelong fan, and so I think that makes it easier for me now. And I don't know if you can see behind me, I'm a Pittsburgh sports fan. That's what these towers are. So
Okay.
if it's like Pittsburgh sports, you'll see that on my Twitter account. And like I try to practice what I preach. So I'm not tweeting it at Steelers, oh, you guys just blew another kick, or like, oh, Big Ben's the worst. Like I'm not.
That would really be the height of irony if you're just like you log off the Indiana basketball Twitter account. Now you're like angrily tweeting Steelers stuff.
Right. And so I try to practice what I preach. I'm not one of those people who angry tweets at athletes just because I've seen it happen. But I think being a bit removed from Indiana sports and thinking of it more, I guess, as a job or as a business, it's obviously something I enjoy consuming, but I'm not like a diehard fan. That makes it easier to kind of remove myself from certain situations.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a lot of Steelers fans in our audience, so they will certainly be happy to hear that. What
Yeah.
I know we're running up on time, and I want to be respectful of your time, so I really appreciate you joining us. What is your athletic background? Did you play sports growing up?
So I played sports like through high school, like a typical like washed up jock. I played volleyball for a little bit. I threw shot put and discus, that kind of stuff. But I went to, and this might shock some people, I went to a Division II school in Colorado. So I was really involved. At my high school, I was like a football manager or something. And the SID at my Division II school used to work at the paper where I graduated from high school. So like we had that weird common connection. I was looking for a job while I was in undergrad. We had that connection. He hired me, and I've worked in sports ever since. So went from D2 to being an NCAA intern to being at the University of North Carolina and the University of Indiana. So it's wild, but
So one last question for you. It's really interesting to get your perspective that, you were at North Carolina, you were at Indiana. Obviously, as you said, two basketball schools kind of operating on different planes over the last couple of decades. North Carolina's been having more success and a higher national profile than Indiana has. But Indiana fans, especially the ones like me who, grew up when Indiana was, one of the most important basketball programs in the country, we kind of view ourselves on the same level as North Carolina. What have you noticed about the differences or the similarities between the fan bases, having worked at North Carolina and at Indiana?
oh, they're so similar. And IU fans will probably hate me for saying that. They're so similar. And I worked at North Carolina the year that my last year there was when they lost to Villanova on the buzzer beater. So not a blaze of glory there. But they're very similar, like traditional basketball minded. They know the sport really well, diehard fans. They're raised in it. You're a fan when you're born, and you never stop being a fan. They could talk about the history of the programs. North Carolina, they love talking about history, and I know that like you mentioned different planes, but to me, the North Carolina fans talk about history as much as the Indiana fans do. So a lot of similarities there. And it was funny because Roy's retired now, which is so weird to say, but when I was there, they used to criticize Roy so much. Like they would get on him about not using his timeouts. He never did anything good enough. Like all the criticism was about Roy. And in my mind, I was always like, who would you trade him for?
Yeah.
Like who? Is there anybody that you'd rather be the coach? Like, no, you just are annoyed with what you have. And so they were just as kind of driven to win, I think, as Indiana fans are. Like Indiana fans are like excited for the next game, excited for the next season, ready to see what we're doing, always up on what's going on with the program. And North Carolina fans were the same. So the competitive interests are very similar. And when I started at Indiana, that year we played North Carolina in Assembly Hall and beat them. And I think that was the year North Carolina went on to win the national championship. So that season, that year was great for me. So I've been all in on Indiana basketball, before starting here, but that really helped kind of put my two basketball school fandoms together.
Yeah. So last question for you. Where's the best place for folks to connect with you? And then what are, I think everybody knows kind of the main IU accounts. Is there anything that you guys are doing on social media that maybe not a lot of people know about that you want to promote that people need to know is happening?
I would say, well, one, my handle is my name. So Lynnea Phillips, check that out. That's my Twitter.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And I would say the account that a lot of people don't follow that I wish more people kind of took an interest in was the Cuban Center account, and it's at Cuban Center. I run it. Surprise, surprise. But we talk a lot.
How do you keep all these accounts straight?
I have like 20 Twitter accounts on my phone. That's ridiculous. But
okay, have you ever sent out a tweet from the wrong account and then had to quickly delete it before I manage like 4 different accounts, and I've done that before.
Not lately, but Twitter's gotten better at like letting you know what account you're on when you're tweet. I tweet literally from the Twitter app. Like other people like use other like no, literally the Twitter app is what I use.
Yeah.
And they're good about letting you know what account you're on, but like it used to be bad, and like I used to tweet from the wrong account all the time, but not lately.
Good.
But follow the Cuban Center Twitter account. I post a lot about the behind the scenes, how we get to certain projects or how certain projects kind of come to fruition. We do a lot of like retweeting about NIL related things. The different happenings in our department. I try to share the love between the other content creators in our department too. So you'll see a lot of retweets of my colleagues. And we really try to shine a light on the different projects we're doing and what's going on in the Cuban Center space. So give that account some love. That would be much appreciated.
By the way, I love your Twitter banner picture, which is you, like you're kind of sitting up in the row where you're talking about earlier, and then you're kind of in the background. There's a computer kind of obscuring your face, and then in the foreground is this IU fan with his arms up, like screaming upset at something.
I hope he listens to this podcast and makes himself known, because I don't know who that guy is, but I love. When I saw that picture, I'm like, that's the one. That's it.
It's awesome. And who knows? He's probably yelling at a ref, but the way his body's turned, he also might be yelling at the IU bench too. We're not quite sure. So go to Lynnea's Twitter, Lynnea Phillips, look at that, and if you can identify this person, let us know.
Let us know.
Let us know. Lynnea, this was awesome. I really appreciate you giving us so much insight on what goes on. This is probably something that for a lot of IU fans, especially a lot of older IU fans, that never thought they would be paying attention to, never wanted to pay attention to, but I think everybody's kind of coming around to the fact that this is a big part of college sports. And so it's so useful to kind of know what goes on behind the scenes. And you guys are doing a great job. You really are. So I'm so impressed with the work that you guys put out. So keep up the good work. It's been awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and go IU.
Absolutely. Go Hoosiers. Lynnea, thank you.